Steer our intentions to align with your righteous will. Remind us of your faithful provision when our efforts fail or fall short. May all glory go up to you.
On this school, your blessing, Lord. On this school, your blessed bestowed. On this school, your blessing, Lord. May it come and never go.
Our officiating chairperson, Mr. Summerscale, to come up and address the school.
That was a very hard act to follow. An absolutely brilliant film. Thank you very much. Live on in memory. But good morning, and it's great for my wife and I to be back with you for another Founders. We love being here, and this is always very, very special. As many will know, on November the 11th, next week, at 11 o'clock of the 11th day of the 11th month of the year 1918, 100 years ago, the guns fell silent to mark the end of the First World War in the history of the so-called civilized world. At the very moment when the church bells were ringing out to celebrate peace, a letter was delivered to the mother and father of the poet Wilfred Owen, bearing the news of the death of their son. A week earlier, on November the 4th, our Founders' Day, Owen's unit had been ordered to cross a canal in northern France. It was told that there was to be, quote, the order, no retirement under any circumstances. They were mown down by German machine guns. One of Owen's finest poems, published after his death, is called, with apt accuracy, Futility. A notebook was found on Wilfred Owen's body after he was killed. In it, he had written the words, "When I go from hence, let this be my parting word, that what I have seen is unsurpassable." These words come from one of Rabindranath Tagore's poems in Gitanjali. 2 years after her son's death, Owen's mother wrote to Tagore, "I have been trying to find courage to write to you ever since I heard you were in London. But the desire to tell you something is finding its way into this letter today. It is nearly 2 years ago that my dear son went out to the war for the last time. And the day he said goodbye to me, we were looking together across the sun-glorified sea, looking towards France with breaking hearts. When he, my poet son, said those wonderful words of yours, beginning at, when I go from hence, let this be my parting word. And when his pocketbook came back to me, I found these words written in his dear writing with your name, Mr. Tagore, beneath. Would it be asking too much of you to tell me what book I should find the whole poem in? When she came to read further, Susan Owen will also have found these lines in Tagore's Gitanjali. I know that when the day will come when my sight of this earth shall be lost, and life will take its leave in silence, drawing the last curtain over my eyes, yet stars will watch at night and morning rise as before, and hours heave like sea waves, casting up pleasures and pains. Things that I long for in vain, and things that I got, let them pass. Let me but truly possess the things that I have ever spurned and overlooked. 1.5 million Indians from all over the then undivided India, competent and non-competent, went to the war in northern France, the deserts of Africa, the Middle East, Palestine, Mesopotamia, Gallipoli, and Egypt. By its end, 72,000 were dead or missing, vast numbers wounded or with their lives shattered forever. Very few can have returned to their towns and villages unchanged, physically or mentally. Most thought that they would never return. In her superb book, For King and Another Country, copy here for the library, Shravani Vasu quotes a wounded soldier from the Garhwal writing to his friend in India. As when leaves fall off a tree and not a space is left bare on the ground, so the earth is covered with dead men and there is no place to put one's foot. The whole world is being finished. We have been constantly fighting for 6 months, but we have not even seen the sun. Day and night the rain has fallen, and the country is so cold that I cannot describe it. I speak of these sad and terrible far-off events not to fill us with gloom at the start of a busy and happy weekend, which unites us and our families in the spirit of anticipation and excitement and fulfillment. But just to allow us a moment of pause and reflection on what it is that makes life, in the words of another poet, precious and remarkable, gives hope and value and joy. And perhaps we may even vow to ourselves that we shall not waste its opportunities and its blessed moments if we are fortunate enough to find them coming our way. And also not to spurn or overlook those more mundane aspects of daily life which can too easily be taken for granted, but which need to be truly possessed for a full existence. So, this morning in 2018, a last word from Rabindranath Tagore. Who are you, reader, reading my poems 100 years hence? I cannot send you one single flower from this wealth of the spring, one single streak of gold from yonder clouds. Open your doors and look abroad. In the joy of your heart, may you feel the living joy that sang one spring morning, sending its glad voice across 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's always a great pleasure to hear your words of wisdom. And I'm sure, like me, there are a number of students who look forward to the opening assembly in the year to hear you speak.
Leaders team, the guys who've done this.
So we click these photos in various events and the framing has been done. Hand you over to us.
These are the plain page and these are the twin page. And also, so we made tables by using tires and made
Which school class are you? 6. Is that right? It's passed on by the
Master of Paris, but it made this hand.
So you have molds for this?
So no, they made it.
then we got to make just
more activities. Like we did 10, I think they were 100 now. They were fitting the time.
কতটুকু সময় ছিল বহুত সময়
Show away the junk food. Is that the rhythm in? Chips and seeds and chocolates. Every day would be a sin.
Wonderful performance that we've seen over the years through Sankar Jyoti and Ranajit, and now they're going to do it.
Good evening. We always learn from our elders, and this is all the more relevant in a residential school. A common refrain one hears in a school like ours is, I learned how to play the guitar from my senior, significant step towards our students finding mentors in the alumni who will be able to guide and advise them how to tackle the world outside their ABS cocoon. I end by thanking all our
Beta.
Demand. Miri Chiori, The Maiden of the Miri Tribe, is a novel written by Rajanikanth Bordoloi. It was the first Assamese novel published in
দুখৰ পাছতহে পোক আহে এন্ধাৰ নিশাৰ অন্ততহে পৰুজে আহে
আমার কপালত ফুক লেখা তাই বুঝিছ তহঁতিও আমার বুঝি নাপালি পালে বিচাৰি আনি তহঁতকে দিলেও জীৱনটো নাৰাখো পালু পালু ভয়াবৰ গাভৰু এজনী পাইছো
ইখহু তোৰ বস্তু মই কাঢ়ি নিছো
ঐ ৰবি ৰবি মাৰ পিঠখন কৰিছ কিয়
How did not be serving you? Samosas and kachoris.
What poor street children? That would have been a real tearjerker. See, I was not a bag of tissues.
No, I'm unaware of any forthcoming announcement. Sets of Ooty Express. None little chili, some sun-dried tomatoes.
Ever since the day that is coming to this house, I've been talking.
I'd like to point out that Riyam was not present most of the time. He was often pursuing Brandy for Perk B.
Well, thank you, Inspector. Sorry I wasn't actually there.
That's quite all right, Mr. Chopra. Maybe next time, huh?
Sure, anytime.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Raj, these snacks is... Dad? Raj, oh my God,
And welcome to Speech Day of the 23rd Founder Celebrations of the Assam Valley School. It is my honor and privilege to welcome the Chief Guest for Speech Day 2018, Professor Ashok Chatterjee, Advisor, Center for Heritage Management. Professor Ashok
lives that have changed, transformed, renewed and healed. We give thanks for everyone that has ever served in this institution, for their hard work, dedication, patience and perseverance. And we give thanks to you, O Heavenly Father, who has walked with us and guided us through both the ups and the downs. Teach us to love eternal truth and seek its freedom. Bless each one of us and keep us safe.
Sacrifices of the past with war and humility.
While we offer extra study time and science coaching to students who want to appear for competitive exams, others have the opportunity to build impressive resumes, as we not only help them in academics, but also provide great exposure in sports and cultural fields.
Dear friends, all of you who are part of the Assam Valley School Parivar family, it's quite an overwhelming experience to be here. I have to take you back right at the start to a prize giving. We'll have to do some quick calculation here. 1941. School in Allahabad, there's a prize giving taking place. And this particular school had awards, I suppose similar to what you have here for achievers, but also those who did not achieve were brought on the stage and made an example of. One of them was a 6-year-old who misunderstood the protocol and the formalities and went straight up to the Mother Superior to demand his prize. But actually, he was being made an example of because he would always run away from school and was failing all his classes. That young man is in front of you today. So you can get prizes and you can get other kinds of lessons of experience. My parents were so horrified because after the ceremony, the Mother Superior told my parents that this child was not to return to the school. Fortunately for me, in the town of Allahabad, the principal of Woodstock School happened to spend his winters. So my parents went rushing off to him to say, at 6 years old, we seem to have produced a delinquent. What shall we do? and this great man, his name was Alan Parker, that I think Ashok is giving you a message. He knows a bad school when he sees one. And so I was transferred to my beloved Woodstock School in this town where I was born and raised, and it's great to be in another school such as this, which is clearly based on values. It's quite an overwhelming, this little part of my life is not in the biodata that I shared with the school. Possibly if I had indicated that I'd been thrown out at the age of 6 from my first school, both Victor and the head of school would have had second thoughts. But here I am, and what can I share with you that would be relevant? Firstly, let me thank you for inviting me. It's an overwhelming experience to be here in this great campus, to see the school. I've heard a lot about it, but I wasn't quite prepared for the scale of the surprise. And just coming to your school from Guwahati and flying over that great, great river is a very humbling experience. So I hope that all of you who are living and studying and perhaps even belonging to this part of our country and this part of our subcontinent world will know how deeply privileged you are. Because the river on whose banks the school exists is literally a river of life, carrying with it so many memories, so many hopes, and so many fears and concerns about the future. I think it was wonderful that we were reminded by Dr. Summerskill of what happened 100 years ago. That war was fought to end all wars, and we know that that promise has not been fulfilled. We also know that we are in an area, in a region, and in a world which is simply beset by division, by hatred, and by fear. And that's something that this school and every other school worth its name has to contend with. How do these great values which you celebrate here, how do they stand up when you leave and go out into the harshness of the real world? There are no answers. There are no quick tuitions to tell you how to cope with the real world. But let me share some experiences which might be of some use, perhaps, to remind us of the opportunities that we have and the responsibilities that come with those opportunities. I, for one, don't think I ever won a prize. Maybe I did at school, but I can't remember. And whenever I've come to a prize giving, my thoughts have always been with those who do not get a prize, which included me. But the same principle that I mentioned, who saved my parents' fears by bringing me to Woodstock, would always start the prize giving at the end of the year by saying, nobody ever gave me a prize, so here's a tin of chocolates for everybody who doesn't get a prize today. So we'd all go and get our little awards, and nobody felt left out of it. But one of the things that you have, I think, shared with me today in this spectacular display of creativity and the thinking that I was taken through, and which continued in this hall, has been that what really is education about? One of the problems of this region of India, the Northeast, is that it is considered, and this term is still used, underdeveloped. And yet, if you look at the global agenda, if you look up on your computers and you Google something called 2030 Agenda, this is the global agenda of progress to which every country of the United Nations is a signatory, including India. And these are the Sustainable Development Goals. And if you look at those Sustainable Development Goals, and if you look at the goals which this planet is supposed to achieve by the year 2030, you will realize that the Northeast is far ahead of the rest of this country. It is not at the margin. The Northeast is at the center. The rest of us are at the margins. And the reason for that is that we have measured development in all the wrong ways for the last 70 years, which is one reason why this region of our country has also always been beset with so much strife and so much uncertainty and so much anxiety. What do I mean by that? The Sustainable Development Goals are an attempt to tell this world that you do not measure progress by statistics. You do not measure progress by mathematical measurements. You measure them through a concept of well-being. And well-being, human well-being, caring for each other and caring for this earth that shelters us all, is what this part of the country and what this part of this world can teach the rest of us. We have destroyed so much under the false application of this word development that I hope that you who live and study in the Northeast will understand how privileged you are and how much we must look to you to lead us into the solutions for the future. Because 2030 Agenda is your story. It's what you have already achieved. And you will probably be far ahead of the rest of this country when the actual calculations are done about who is achieving sustainability. And that's the buzzword these days. But let me tell you of another effort at measuring educational quality. It's great to be in a school where design is taught, where design is understood. You've even given an award to a designer. This is extraordinary. I have spent, as you have heard, a large chunk of my life at the National Institute of Design. That institute is now over 50 years old. But when that institute was started, nobody understood what the hell we were doing. They really didn't understand it at all. And in 1976, when the first batch of our graduates came out as professional designers, trained in India to the outside world, we held our breath. That would industry accept this profession? I notice that you call it art, design, and technology. That's the problem of that word design. Nobody quite knows what it is. 50 to 60 years ago, the word meant fine art or engineering. Were we artists? No. Aesthetics, yes, but artists, no. Were we engineers? No. Were we architects? Not really. Then what on earth were we? And design had to then prove itself as a profession that is based on problem solving, on having the ability to analyze a problem, to understand the various options for solution, to test those solutions, and then perhaps to realize some of those solutions in the real world, in the marketplace. and elsewhere. All of this was very difficult for people to understand. But since I saw so much rich craft, and since you belong to the richest craft region of our country, let me tell you that the history of the National Institute of Design begins with a handcrafted product. All of you, I think, are familiar with the lota. Are you? I wish I had one here in front of me. In 1955, an exhibition was held in New York City at the Museum of Modern Art, and it was called Textiles and Ornamental Arts of India. Mrs. Pupul Jayakar had been commissioned by the government of India to take that exhibition to New York, the first that independent India had sent to that country. At the exhibition were some famous designers who helped Mrs. Jayakar to actually put the exhibition on show. Amongst them was a man called Charles Eames, who is the founding spirit of NID. And he asked Mrs. Jayakar questions. He said, Pupul, what you have brought to New York, is this about India's past or is it about its future? And Pupul Jayakar began a conversation with him on that profound question that were our crafts about the past or were they about the future? And what did that mean? What did modernity actually mean for newly independent India? Coming out of colonial rule, coming out as an agricultural society, aspiring to be part of the industrial world, but having the legacy of Gandhi, Tagore, and others, and of the freedom struggle. Eventually, in the discussion, it was pointed out that the problems that would have to be solved in India would require the ability of young men and women to work on teams using many disciplines to resolve the problems. And Mrs. Jayakar said how difficult that is, because Indian education, as a result of colonial rule, had become tunnel vision. And it remains that today. People come out as specialists. And yet we were told, way back in 1955, that problem solving would require people who were specialists, yes, but specialists perhaps in generalization. In being able to work on teams, not individually, and solve problems together. That is how design education came to India. The decision was to attempt this. But how do you attempt it? The National Institute of Design kept far away from the Ministry of Education. The visionaries who established it decided it would have nothing to do with the education system. Nothing to do with the education system, which meant that when the first graduates of NID came out in 1976, their diploma was not recognized by the government of India that had set up the institution. Why? Because NID had done another extraordinary thing. No exams, no marks, but the toughest evaluation system in the country, by admission of the Ministry of Education. You were evaluated by the quality of your work. Unlike what we have seen today, nobody could be a topper, because your solutions would have to be tested by actual real-life clients. And if real-life clients were not satisfied with the solutions you brought to the table, you would have to start all over again. Now, I'm not putting down people who get fine marks and who achieve excellence, which can be measured and rewarded. That's good, because we all need role models. But I am pointing out that the measurement of education and the measurement of values can never be done statistically. And we need to understand that when we look at the way the world has gone, and we look at the fact that today human progress finally is moving towards an understanding of values that we have heard celebrated today. How important those values are. So every one of you, whether you have won an award or you have not won an award, are part of a community of quality which this school so clearly represents. And every one of you is deserving of an award because this sense of quality which I can feel as an outsider and as a stranger is because of you. Each one of you. As parents, as children, and as the community of educators that have brought you here. And that's a great achievement. So congratulations. I think that the story of design education in this country is also one which has not been easy. After all these years of experimentation, the National Institute of Design was declared an Institute of National Importance just 2 years ago, which means that now NID can give degrees and not diplomas. And God help us, this, I call it a kiss of death, means that we're back under the Ministry of Education. How the design movement is going to cope with this, I do not know. But throughout the world, design education is being challenged by a kind of dumbing down of education that was mentioned today by the head of schools when she talked about tuition. I live in Ahmedabad, having spent a big chunk of my life at NID. But now, when people want directions to my flat, I have to tell them, if you're coming from Jodhpur Kachar Rasta, turn left at the Sky Blue Institute of Design. If you're coming from ISRO, turn right at the Rathore Institute of Design. These are tuition shops, selling skills and offering admission into all the best design schools, architecture schools in the country. So there's a thriving industry of tuition shops, and schools like NID are now challenged that when they interview students to come into the school, how do you account for what the tuition shops are doing to the creativity and innovation that we used to look for in the fresh minds used to come to join our institute? It's a real challenge, because perhaps those tuition shops are also doing something, a service that clearly the market is demanding. So we come back to values, and we come back to the actual measurements of what education is all about. And the design discipline itself is impossible without a strong value base. Because the only reason design exists as a profession is to lift the quality of life. That's the purpose of this profession. And Charles Eames, in his report to the Government of India, chose the LOTA as the supreme example of industrial design, as the greatest example of what design was all about. And in his essay on the LOTA, which the Government of India was quite shocked to receive, because they thought they were getting a feasibility report, and what they got was an essay on the LOTA, which is now a design classic. But he ended his essay on the LOTA by expressing the hope that an institute would be created that would encourage the Lotas of tomorrow. And by that he said, I mean those products, systems and environments which will serve the people of India with the same sense of service, dignity and love that the Lota has served this culture for thousands of years. So with that, I conclude and offer you service, dignity and love as the truest measures of what this great school is doing and what it will do for the future. Thank you for having me and all good wishes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of Speech Day 2018.